Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, Monday edition, a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. Dan Labbe with Mary Kay Cabot. At the day after the Browns lose to the 49ers, 26-8. Of course, a lot of fallout from that game. Shedeur Sanders' second start. He will get a third against the Titans. And of course, we have a bunch of questions from our Football Insider subscribers. So Mary Kay, let's get to it. We'll go to Tom in Middlebury, Connecticut first. He says, "Hey, Mary Kay, I don't understand the decision to go week to week with the starting quarterback. I would tell Shedeur Sanders he has the last 5 games and let him settle in, show some faith in him, and see what he can do. What would you do over the last 5 weeks?"
I actually don't let me rephrase that. I actually don't hate the week to week strategy. I do not hate it. And here's why. Because Shedeur Sanders sometimes feels as though he has arrived when he has a good game. After he played very well in preseason against the Panthers, he was feeling himself. And then after he beat the Las Vegas Raiders, same thing. I think he sort of felt like, I'm here, Cleveland. I'm here, NFL. And I think he needs to stay hungry and stay humble. And so I like the fact that Kevin Stefanski, at least for now, and maybe this has nothing to do with why he's doing it this way, but at least for now, I think it's keeping Shedeur very hungry to have to go out and try to win these games each week and to prepare during the week like crazy, and to know that if he doesn't go out and perform well, that the job might not be his anymore. So I actually think it's a brilliant strategy, even if that's not what they're doing. And then, I just think it's absolutely 100% the way to go. And then the other part of it is, you just don't know. What if he starts throwing the ball all over the yard and he's throwing interceptions and it's a disaster out there? What if teams start to catch on and do some things to take him out of the game and they want to see more of Dillon Gabriel at some point? What if they get to the point 4 starts from now, 3 starts from now, and they're like, hey, now we've seen enough of him. We want to go back and get a few more data points on Dillon Gabriel. So I don't have a problem with it at all.
Yeah, I honestly don't either. I think it's something that, they're asking him to play a certain way, and they're asking him to do, be safe, don't take bad sacks. They're setting up a lot of things for him and making sure that he's not falling into some of those bad habits that they're trying to break him of. And I think he's done a good job of that the last 2 weeks. And I think, holding that carrot out in front of him, like, if you can continue to do this and, we'll put more and more on your plate and you'll keep earning starts, as I've called it before, survive in advance. Just kind of keep doing what we're asking you to do, attack the weeks like we're asking you to attack the weeks. And I would have a bigger issue with it if Kevin were doing the thing where it was like on Monday, he's sitting there with us and saying, well, I don't know who's going to start this week. He's being pretty clear who's starting. And even after the game yesterday, he said Shedeur Sanders was going to start. And then it was today where, he mentioned it's going to be week to week. Maybe he did it on Sunday too, but said it was going to be a week to week thing, or that's where he is right now. I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think internally this quarterback room knows who's starting every week, and they know pretty early in the process, and Kevin's not playing games with it. So I understand what Tom is getting at. Would Shedeur approach things a little bit differently if he knew he were the starter the rest of the way going forward? Yeah, and maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe, to your point, that's a bad thing. You want him to continue to understand this is our expectation of you, and if you keep checking these boxes, you get to keep starting.
Yes, absolutely 100%. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Dan, when I mentioned the fact that after each of those 2 games, he started to get a little heady about those games and about what he had accomplished and how he had kind of maybe arrived at his moment. And he has a long way to go. He's got a very long way to go. And so I think that this is the right way to go. And, I think he'll keep his nose to the grindstone and he'll keep working really, really hard. And he needs to, because he doesn't have any chemistry with his starting receivers or his primary pass catchers. He just doesn't have it. And we saw the sideline confrontation between Shedeur Sanders and Jerry Jeudy. And these guys need to put their heads together and figure out how to play some good football together. And they need to get along during the week, and they need to get along on the sidelines and in the game. And this doesn't mean that they don't get along these kinds of things happen in the heat of the moment all the time. I've seen many, many, many heated sideline exchanges over the years. So it doesn't mean that they don't get along, but it does mean, and we know because Shedeur told us, is that they're not really on the same page. And Shedeur is not trusting what he's seeing yet with Jerry Jeudy. And so therefore, he's not always letting it rip, or maybe the ball's coming out a little bit late, or maybe they're just not on the same page together. And when they were studying that Microsoft Surface, which the whole world can see it, I embedded it in my story. So it's on cleveland.com. And you can see that they are arguing over what went wrong on a particular incompletion. And one of them felt one kind of a way, and the other one saw it completely differently. So these guys need to be communicating a ton. That's what Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco did when they were working together and making beautiful music together in 2023. They were constantly talking, constantly going over things, constantly working. And I think I've even asked these guys, hey, are you doing this? What are you doing to get that extra time and timing down together? And I don't think I got a satisfactory answer to that. I think that they need to be in each other's heads. They need to be hanging out with each other. They need to be at each other's apartments watching, or houses, watching film together this week. Whatever it takes, those two need to get it together. And if they can get it together, then the offense will be so much better for it.
Yeah, and I think to your one point, I kind of had to laugh while you were talking about the Carolina thing. There was a Nike ad. I forgot about this. Nike put out an ad after the Carolina preseason start. So that's what happens with Shedeur Sanders. And, after the Raiders win, it was just the hype train was in full effect just across the board. And Shedeur played well in Carolina. That was only a preseason game, and he played well enough against the Raiders. But I think we all kind of saw, why the Browns won that game, and that he did his job, which is fine. And that's why he earned that other start. But yeah, it goes off the rails a little bit when Shedeur has success and the team wins. So to the question, I think that just drives home the fact that maybe doing this week to week works. And we did get a bunch of questions about Jerry Jeudy. And I think the important point, and I was looking this up while you were talking, because the reality is, whoever the starting quarterback is next year, Jerry Jeudy's not going anywhere. He's going to be a member of the Cleveland Browns. They signed him to that extension. There's really even if the Browns wanted to move on, or even if they brought in a new GM who wanted to move on, it's not going to happen. Most likely. So whoever the quarterback is, whether Jerry Jeudy is your wide receiver 1 next year, or your wide receiver 2, or wherever he is, he's going to be on this football team. So you got to get that figured out. It's not just a matter of you got 5 more games and then it's time to move on. Jerry Jeudy's going to be around for the foreseeable future. So if it's Shedeur, if it's somebody else, Jerry Jeudy's going to be a part of that quarterback's future.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that wouldn't happen is if somehow he asks to be traded and the Browns decide to accommodate that wish, which, again, I don't see that happening. But if you're going to have a completely unhappy and disgruntled player, I do see that, perhaps there is a world in which they might think about doing something like that. But it certainly didn't make them trade Myles Garrett. And I've never seen a player more disgruntled than him when he was making his contentious trade demand. So I do think that Jerry Jeudy will be on the team. I also think that they have to find another wide receiver 1. I think they need to find another wide receiver 1 to go along with him. And then he's either co-1 or he is number 2, which he might be better suited to that role, where you take a little bit of pressure off of him and he doesn't have to make the contested catch, and he's not always drawing the opponent's best cornerback. So maybe he would be better off. I mean, when you have a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins, that you can make beautiful offensive music when you have a situation like that. So that's what they need to do. They need to keep adding to the pile. I would spend one of those first round picks perhaps on a wide receiver, or something else very high on a wide receiver, or maybe you go out and you trade for one, or whatever you have to do. But they need to upgrade their receiving core. I'm just going to keep saying it over and over and over. I thought they should have done it this year. I thought that they were one really good receiver and some good quarterback play away from contending this year. And they didn't get those two things. And therefore, this is the situation they're in right now, and they could have won the AFC North this year.
Yeah, just I'm looking at it now. Jerry Jeudy, in a trade, this would be pre-June 1st, and this is according to Over the Cap. In a trade would be a $22 million dead cap hit. In a cut, it would be $28 million. So there's a lot that would go into having to move on from him. And this team has a ton of dead cap already, and maybe more coming with some decisions that they have to make on some veterans. I know Wyatt's got a big number after this year, even though it's void years. They got decisions to make on Njoku. So again, I just think it's hard to imagine a world where Jerry Jeudy is not on this roster after this season. So they've got to get that figured out. And that leads us to this question from Mike Parker in Chester, Maryland. Hey, Mary Kay, do you think Jerry Jeudy is having a subpar season, or was last year the anomaly? Prior to last year, he hadn't lived up to his first round draft expectations.
Well, I'm going to answer that question, Dan, but while I'm doing that, while I'm getting started launching into that question, I'm very curious what the post June 1 cap chart.
So I'll tell you what the post June 1 is.
Jerry, because you can play with that a little bit. Not that they're going to do it.
So you could trade him. You could trade him post June 1st, and that would ease a lot of the cap burden. You'd be looking at $6.4 million for the next 3 years. Not $6.4 million each of the next 3 years. So It's certainly, if you traded him post June 1st, that would ease a lot of that burden.
Right. And you can execute that trade, and then it just becomes official on June 1st, I believe. So something like that could possibly happen. Again, it probably will not happen, but if he absolutely wants out and they find another way to accomplish their passing game, and they find some people that they like better or are a better fit with Shedeur Sanders or whoever is going to be their starting quarterback, we just don't know how this is all going to play out yet. But getting back to the question that our questioner asked, I think that Jerry Jeudy would probably be playing better this year had the Browns not had so much quarterback upheaval, and had they had a better situation in training camp where you can get your timing down with one of them, or if Joe Flacco had gotten a bunch of the first team reps and they had gotten off to a better start with Joe Flacco, and some other things around him were going well. Quinshon Judkins wasn't around for the early part of the season, and was just kind of getting up to speed after showing up a little bit late, and they had some tackle issues in the beginning of the season. They just weren't a well-oiled machine, and Joe Flacco, like Shedeur Sanders, did not get a ton of first-team reps in the early part of training camp while they were working towards making Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel their top two guys. So I think that Jerry has been suffering from a number of different things. I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. I think it's the fact that they haven't had a bona fide number two to take any pressure off. I think it's all the quarterback upheaval. I think sometimes he's just a little bit off right now. He mentioned that he's got some off the field things going on perhaps. So I just don't know, but it's not what anybody expected. And it's been detrimental to the passing game. There's no question about it. And as I mentioned before, I think those two guys need to do whatever they can do to get it together and start playing some good football together.
Yeah, look, I don't know if Jerry Jeudy is the 1,200-yard receiver he was last year every year, but I still am convinced he's better than what we've seen this year, especially with the spring and summer he had. I mean, we were all feeling great about how Jerry looked in the spring and the summer. He was great, and it felt like he was going to build on that. I think last year he benefited a little bit from kind of that Jameis Winston, I'm going to throw caution to the wind. I don't care what happens. We're going to sling the ball all over the place. But I think he had a good year just overall outside of that. And so that's why this year has been so confusing for him. It's the drops. It's, just the lack of production, frustration, all of that stuff. So maybe last year was the outlier. I don't know. But even if it was, I think he's a better receiver than what we're seeing this year. And I think that even if he wasn't, like I said, if he's not going to be a 1,200-yard receiver every year, okay, that's fine. But it's just so strange how this year has gone. And I do think it's worth pointing out, he was talking about this last year, and I think he's talked about it a little bit this year, kind of noticing how teams were changing covering him after Amari Cooper got traded. And so I think that's affected him too. So to your point, maybe that's saying he is better off as, and he probably wouldn't want to hear this, but he is better off as like a number 2 receiver as opposed to being the guy who's the focus of the defense every week.
Right. And right now, if you look at it, there is really no one else that is taking any of those targets, snaps away from him and having big games in addition to him. It's not happening for anybody in the receiver room. It's really not. Isaiah Bond, he's catching a pass here or there. Cedric Tillman, nothing is happening with him. And even David Njoku is really having a very down year. So the passing game is just off in general. And there's nobody to kind of just offset what's going on here. So they need to add to the pile next year. But for the rest of this year, those two guys need to do whatever they can. And maybe if Ced Tillman, can pick it up a notch, and if Shedeur can start to feel more comfortable with him, he can start throwing the ball to those guys. But he's not even really throwing the ball very much to his top 2 receivers. And that's a problem.
Yeah. And I think it's part of some of this is just having rookies all over the place, including a quarterback. Like it's affected a lot of things. So let's talk about another play that did involve one of these rookies. It's been a topic of discussion since yesterday. This comes from Doward Williamson in Sacramento, California. Hey, Mary Kay, please help me make sense of the 4th and 1 play call on the Browns 33-yard line. And that is, of course, the play where they line up from their own 33. They were trailing, I believe, 10-8 at the time. And yep. Harold Fannin takes the direct snap, fumbles it, and San Francisco ends up getting the ball back and essentially starts the process of putting that football game away. So it's been a big topic here over the last couple of days, and our guy Doward is trying to figure out exactly why they did it and what went wrong on it.
Well, I'm very interested. We always have to wait until Thursday to talk to the coordinators and get the answers to some of these questions. But I'm interested to hear what Tommy Rees says about that play call. Now, Kevin Stefanski always says that it's his decision on whether or not to actually go for it on 4th and 1. So I believe he's taking full responsibility for that. But if you remember, the previous time we had an issue with the 4 and 1, Tommy came out afterwards and said, I should have run the ball on the one where Dylan Gabriel got sacked on a 4th and 1.
I remember that.
Said, we should have run the ball there. So I'm very curious to see what he's going to say about this one. But in addition to Harold trying this for the first time, they had issues with getting Wyatt out there in time, and they were trying to quick snap, and they just weren't ready. And Harold kind of, maybe panicked a little bit and really wasn't sure quite what to do there. And he ended up fumbling the ball. So he took responsibility for that today, and he owned that. And Kevin Stefanski always says that the buck stops with him on a play like that. And I'm anxious to hear what Tommy Rees says and what they thought, what the thinking was that went into that. But it was somewhat of a curious decision with where they were in the game and on the field at that moment in time.
Yeah, and just thinking back on it, in real time, sometimes it's hard to judge all these things while we're trying to juggle injuries and, all the things that are happening on a game day. I think I wrote like 4 injury posts yesterday during the game, and you're writing your gamer, and we're writing columns and all this stuff. So, going back, it sort of is, they really had some issues, and I don't think the TV copy really captured the issues they were having, because I did go back and watch that play off the TV copy. So you see Wyatt Teller running on with his helmet, but I do remember, like, Wyatt Teller kind of started to run on, then ran off, then ran back on. And part of that is because Tevin Jenkins was playing right guard because they were rotating those two. And Tevin Jenkins is often your eligible guy in those situations. Well, he was already on the field. So now Wyatt Teller was your eligible guy. There was confusion there. And then when you watch it again on that TV copy, you see that like Cam Robinson was lined up on the left, and then they had to move him to the right. And they didn't even get aligned until there was like 2 seconds on the play clock, or like 3 seconds on the play clock. And I don't think Harold was actually under center until there was a second on the play clock. And it just feels to me, and Kevin pushed back on the idea of using a timeout in that situation. Harold Fannin said he should have called timeout. I don't think that's his job to call timeout there, but he took accountability for that today. They probably needed to call a timeout there. That was too big of a play and too big of a moment, and there was too much confusion to not use a timeout in that situation. And look, the bottom line, he's got to catch the snap, right? But that play was doomed from the start based on all the issues they were having, just getting the subs in, getting lined up, all of that stuff. I think somebody on the sideline has to call a timeout in that situation.
Yes, absolutely. And part of it was, and Kevin Stefanski noted this too, that with Jack Conklin out of the game with his concussion, you had KT Levinston in there for Jack Conklin, but Leviston sometimes is in there as the extra blocker.
He's another eligible. He'll come in as the eligible sometimes too.
Right. So there was mass confusion because of all the substitutions and injuries on the offensive line. So I think that that contributed in a big way to just the absolute bedlam on that play. And then you've got a rookie who's doing that for the first time in an NFL game, and he never did it in college. So it's a lot to put a rookie in that type of situation. Next time they have to do it, I'm sure they'll do it a lot better. But I think a lot of it had to do with the offensive line substitutions and Harold looking up and realizing that time was a wasting and we got to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, and it ends up being such a critical play, and that's just it's too big of a play to look at it and say, no, we got to save our timeouts. You've got to use one there, and either maybe you use it and you're like, you know what, now we got to punt. We lost the opportunity, but that's okay. Right. That's okay too. Like if with the way that game was going, I think you could have even afforded that. Oh,
yes.
The decision itself, though, too, I think is part of this, and it was a very aggressive decision. And ultimately, what did you think of that decision in that moment to go for it on that play?
You know what? I usually don't have a problem with being aggressive. The Browns really are not necessarily going anywhere, although if they had won this football game, there would be a world in which they could have remained in the hunt. So I guess you can't use that as an excuse that, just why not try some things and throw some caution to the wind. But I usually don't have a problem with being aggressive. And I think they've practiced it enough that they felt good about it. And if they hadn't had the substitution problems, I think it probably would have been successful. So I didn't have a huge problem with the call in and of itself.
I'm kind of thinking about this in real time because Harold said that thing about the timeout. I almost wonder if they told him, like, when you're going up to the line, like if they kind of told him, if you don't see a certain thing, then call a timeout. I wonder if that was almost in his mind. And obviously this was a different situation. This was the clock running out. And so that's probably why that wasn't in his mind. But I do almost wonder if they sent that play in and they, and there were instructions there to like, we're going to run this if we get a certain look from them. But if we don't, use a timeout there. And then, of course, he was thinking using a timeout. I'm just thinking about it in real time. But I wonder if there were some instructions there with that, too. And he just didn't have time to even diagnose that.
Yeah, and that's something that, once again, hopefully Tommy will be able to shed a little bit more light on that. It'll be late in the week to be going over an important play like that. But I still think that he will illuminate the situation for us because he's really good in those settings and describes things and explains things very well. He's better at that than Kevin is. He gives us a lot more. So looking forward to hearing what he has to say about that.
All right, let's move on to the other bugaboo from Sunday. This question comes from Jeff from Parrish, Florida. Hey, Mary Kay, how can the special teams performance continue to be so abysmal? Can we expect at least minimum levels of competency from them? Stepping out of bounds on the 5-yard line on a kickoff return is an issue.
Why did he do that? I mean, why did he do that? Right? Kevin Stefanski said today he absolutely knows the rule and is well aware of the situation. And I think this is one of those situations where there are a lot of young guys, there are a lot of rookies, there are a lot of players doing things for the first time in a football game in the heat of the moment with the pressure on, and mistakes are going to happen. Mistakes happen by veterans, mistakes happen by rookies. This was a game in which the young guys in particular made some egregious errors that really cost them the football game. And I would throw the Corley out of bounds on that, catching the ball at the 5 and going out of bounds. That gets lumped in together with the 66-yard punt return, the Gage Larvadain muff, and the Harold Fannin fumble. It has to go right in there because that was, once again, it was a key point in the game. It backed them up. They started at the 5. They punted from their 6, right? Which, once again, is going to start the 49ers at midfield on their ensuing drive. And so that was a disastrous play. And, I do chalk some of this up to just rookie mistakes, but they've got to coach them up better and they've got to play it better.
So there was another, and this is one, this kind of goes in the category of something to ask the coordinators 5 days after it happened. But there was another one. So after they get the touchdown to Fannin and they kick the ball off, and the ball lands in the front of the end zone. So it's not like they booted it out of the end zone or anything like that. So the ball just lands in the front of the end zone. And under the new rule, that brings the ball out to the 35-yard line. And that set up San Francisco. Now they hit the big play to George Kittle, but that gave San Francisco an opportunity to go down and get a field goal before the half. And the Browns were starting with the ball in the second half. And I wonder too, again, we talked to Bubba on Thursday. I wonder if that was a mistake too. If just kind of based on where the ball landed, that it was in the front of the end zone, I'm guessing they probably wanted a return there. They probably didn't want to just give San Francisco a free opportunity to start at the 35-yard line. So there was just a lot of sloppy special teams play yesterday.
Right. And once again, is it because there are so many young guys playing special teams and it's hard to drill all of this into them? Or is it because they don't have that enforcer on special teams like they have had in the past? Right? In the past, they've had Mike Ford and other guys that just every single time you look up, they're making a big play on special teams. And I don't know if they really necessarily have that guy. They've got some guys that make big plays on special teams, but I don't know if they have that sort of Pro Bowl special teams ace that they need and somebody that can really, really hold it together in the kicking game. Because they certainly need it. You know how the way that Carson Schlesinger holds things together on defense and calls the plays and is the green sticker guy. They need that guy on special teams, I think, because something's going wrong. They've given up 7 really long returns this year, and that's unacceptable.
Okay, let's wrap up with this one. Bigger picture question. It comes from Sam in Biloxi. Hey, Mary Kay. Do you think the GM and coach are joined at the hip? I think Andrew Berry, he thinks Andrew Berry is coming into his own, but the team needs a more enthusiastic and different head coach. He would hate to see AB go if they change head coaches. I think there's Browns fans that maybe think the opposite of that as well. So, but just generally speaking, the Browns are probably going to have some decisions to make, even if that decision is just keep the status quo at the end of the year. Do you think Kevin and Andrew are joined together in whatever that decision is?
No, they're not joined at the hip by any stretch of the imagination. Remember, they did not come in together. They were hired separately. And Andrew was actually hired, even though there was a gentleman's agreement, I believe, that he was going to get hired. He came in after Kevin Stefanski. And for a period of time, the way that I had heard it, that Kevin was kind of hoping or wishing that he could work with George Paton, who he had worked with in Minnesota. So I don't think that these guys are just, it's all or nothing with them. I do think that when they sit down at the end of the year and decide what they're going to do and how they're going to move forward, I just don't think that they are tied together. Now, having said that, I don't think Andrew is going anywhere. I really don't think Andrew's going anywhere. This is the best rookie class that he's ever had. The future looks incredibly bright. He's built this amazing defense, and they did not get the quarterback thing right this year, and they didn't get the receiving thing right this year. Like I said, they needed one more really good receiver and a quarterback who could come in here and hold it down for them. So they didn't get that right. But the rookie class is outstanding. And next year, they're going to really add another layer. And this is their new Super Bowl window that they are building. That is what this is. If people don't see that, then you're missing what's right in front of your face, because that's what's going on here. This is the foundation for Super Bowl window 2. And it's going to take a good quarterback. There's no question about that. But that's exactly what is going on here. So I don't think he's going anywhere. He's been all over the country scouring and scouting these quarterbacks and trying to figure out what they're going to do for a franchise quarterback in the draft with the 2 first-round picks. I think he's completely 100% safe. I think they will sit down and look at the coaching staff after the season. Because when you're talking about another losing season, which that loss yesterday ensured the fourth losing season under Kevin Stefanski, um, I think they will look long and hard at the coaching staff. Doesn't mean that they're definitely going to do anything about it, but I think that they will look at it. And I think what happens in these last 5 games will make a difference. And I think they need to play clean ball. I think they need to look like a really well oiled machine in many different ways. I mean, maybe they let Kevin stay and feel like they need to do something on special teams. I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen, but they're going to take a long, hard look at the coaching staff, I believe, in the offseason.
Yeah, and I will say, I don't think this when we talk about this, at least to me, I don't think this feels like, I call back to like Mike Pettin and Ray Farmer when that thing fell apart, or, Hugh Jackson, Sashi Brown, that whole disconnect. I don't necessarily get the sense that there's a disconnect like that between Andrew and Kevin. I think they can continue working together. But like you said, I mean, we've sort of reached that point where 6 years into this partnership where they do have to sit down and have hard conversations and make sure that they have the right people in place across the board.
They really do. And I think some of it might have to do with the quarterback situation and what they want to do with, at quarterback. And will there be an agreement on whether or not Shedeur Sanders is the guy moving forward? Sometimes that plays a role in who stays and who goes. So I think, I just don't think we have the answer yet in terms of what the quarterback coach combination is going to be for this football team in 2026.
Well, I think we'll probably talk a lot about that between now and April, whatever. Lots of quarterback talk and lots of draft quarterback talk here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. That'll do it for this Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. Those questions came from our Football Insider subscribers, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. And of course, to all the questions we didn't get to, Mary Kay goes back and answers a bunch of those in her Sunday Hey MK column. So if we missed it on the pod, make sure you check that out at cleveland.com/Browns. Find our YouTube channel, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com, our Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk. Our Twitter's Orange Brown Talk. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.